Thank you for standing by and welcome to the Lumos Diagnostics Investor Webinar and Q&A. All participants are in a listen-only mode. There'll be some comments provided by management, followed by Q&A based on questions that have been submitted via email and live during the session. So if you'd like to submit a question, please do so using the Q&A function within the Zoom app. On the webinar from Lumos today, we have the Executive Chair, Sam Lanyon, CEO, Doug Ward, CFO, Barry Lambert, and IR Representative, Matthias Smith. As mentioned, there'll be some initial commentary from the team for approximately 10 minutes, and then we'll move into the Q&A session thereafter. To start off, I'll hand it over to Sam. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Matthew. So good morning and many thanks for joining us on this call today. As Matt said, my name is Sam Lanyon and I'm the chair of the company. And alongside me is Doug Ward, the CEO, and Barry Lambert, the Chief Financial Officer. You will have seen from this morning that we came out of a trading halt following the completion of a successful placement that raised Australian 4.75 million at 7 cents a share. We've also announced a share purchase plan to raise an additional 4.75 million at the same price. Finally, last week, we announced that we'd secured the FDA clearance to market our product, FebriDx, in the US. So before I hand over to Doug, I'd like to acknowledge that it's not been the easiest 12 months for Lumos. I and the board really appreciate the ongoing support we've had from our shareholders during that time. Both the board and management have had to make a number of really tough decisions during that period along the way. And I think under Doug's quiet and very focused leadership, and with the board's support, we're now in a really good position. And it's great to be providing an update on our successful capital raise following a very significant clearance being granted by the US FDA. Over to you, Doug.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sam. And listen, while I agree it was a challenging 12 months, I think Lumos is in really good shape right now. And I feel confident that we have managed to turn things around. And we are now at a very exciting stage in the company's growth story. I'm sure that many of you were on our webinar literally 12 months ago, I think today, to discuss the FDA's decision not to provide Lumos with clearance for FebriDx. While that was unexpected and a significant setback for the company, it is great to be here 12 months later with FDA clearance for FebriDx in hand and announcing the completion of the successful capital placement for the company. This is certainly a much better call to be having and also a very, very exciting time for Lumos. The primary purpose of this call is to provide a little more color on the rationale for doing the capital raise, how and why we've structured it the way we have, and discuss our recent clearance from the FDA for FebriDx. My intention is to provide a brief update on these topics and then open up the call for your questions. First, with regards to the FDA clearance of FebriDx, I would like to walk through what we've been doing for the last 12 months, as well as acknowledge the incredible hard work and efforts that our Lumos regulatory team has been able to achieve in this effort. Following the rejection last year, we filed an appeal with the FDA asking them to review their decision. While they were not able to change their decision based on the application we had filed, they did indicate that they were open to looking at the new application and it would probably not require too much in the way of additional data. This was further supported during a pre-submission meeting that we held with the FDA in January of this year. Based on the FDA's feedback from this meeting, we filed a new application, which has satisfied the FDA's requirement and secured clearance for us to market FebriDx in the US. We previously guided the market that we expected a decision regarding this new application by the end of calendar year 2023. So this is a very, very pleasant surprise to receive this clearance significantly ahead of time. This has been a very positive development for Lumos, which has been recognized by the market and has provided an opportunity for the company to strengthen its balance sheet, which brings me on to our second topic, the capital raise. This capital raise has been undertaken to provide the cash primarily for two purposes. Firstly, to improve our capital structure by buying back convertible notes that were issued in January of 2023. And secondly, to provide the company with additional working capital, some of which can be used to prepare for the US launch of FebriDx. As many of you will be aware, in November last year, Lumos entered into agreements to issue up to 8 million Australian worth of convertible notes. This was structured in two tranches of 4 million each, with the first tranche issued in January of 2023, and the second to be issued at a future date, subject to mutual agreement by the companies and the note holders. We recognize that while this source of capital was very expensive, the company needed the cash to remain viable and execute on the strategy it developed to get back to a firm growth trajectory. At the time, there were few other financing options available to the company. Fortunately, Lumos has not needed to issue the second tranche of convertible notes as a result of both careful capital management and being able to access 4.2 million US in March through a sale and leaseback agreement with our strategic partner, Hologic. The terms of the convertible notes have provisions to allow Lumos to buy back the majority of the remaining notes on issue under certain terms. The access to more favorable equity capital through the renewed market interest in Lumos has provided an opportunity for the company to improve its balance sheet position, and a significant proportion of the proceeds from the placement is intended to be used to buy back convertible notes on issue. The second use of funds is to provide the company with additional working capital. Over the past 12 months, Lumos has become much leaner and more focused. This includes reducing our headcount by over 60%, significantly reducing our operating cash burn, closing our Sarasota, Florida facility, and consolidating our operations in Carlsbad, California. Despite this, we have continued to build our commercial services business with a number of significant development contract wins, including agreements with Hologic that we have announced on the market, and several other pilot projects with new and existing customers in areas as diverse as human health, animal health, food testing, and molecular testing. These generated revenue of 7.1 million US or 10.7 million Australian in the first 9 months of fiscal year 2023. And we are very happy with where we appear to have ended up the full year for 2023. During this time, we have been very mindful of our cash position and carefully monitored every dollar that we spend. With that in mind, following the FDA rejection last year, we put our investments in FebriDx on hold until we had greater clarity around the product. With the US clearance having come in ahead of our expectation, and now we need to start investing in scaling up the commercial production of FebriDx and finalizing our US sales strategy. This includes activities such as ordering inventory and materials to scale up production and developing sales and marketing material targeted for the US market. While these investments are not huge, we do have to make them before we can start generating sales revenue from FebriDx in the US. In terms of how we have structured this raise, the placement was provided a certainty of proceeds that puts us in a position to be able to buy back the convertible notes. However, myself and the board were adamant that all shareholders, especially those that have remained loyal to the company through some pretty challenging times, needed to be given an opportunity to participate on the same terms. This was the thinking behind offering a SPP for the same amount at the same price as the placement. The SPP closes on Thursday, July 27th, and any proceeds from it will be applied to the company's working capital requirements to support Lumos's growth, including the commercial scale-up activities of FebriDx. We are extremely grateful for the support of all of our shareholders and wanted to ensure that all were treated fairly in this current raise. Before I open it up to questions, I would like to thank all of our shareholders for their support. I've been the CEO here at Lumos for 12 months and was brought in here, given my experience and knowledge in diagnostics, to get the company back on a growth trajectory. I can say without a doubt, it's been very challenging, but it's been extremely rewarding as well for the past 12 months. The opportunity that Lumos has with its technology, know-how, expertise in the development and production of point-of-care diagnostic tests, and its unique reader platform remains as compelling as it was when I decided to join the company, if not more so. I feel that we have now turned the corner and are finally in a great position to capitalize on those opportunities. I see a very exciting future ahead for Lumos. Once again, many thanks. And now, Matt, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Great, thank you, Doug. As you've mentioned, we'll move on to the Q&A session. These questions are based on some sent through via email, and we'll take any live questions. So again, just a reminder, please feel free to type those in using the Q&A function within Zoom. The first question is, what was different in the new 510K application that allowed it to be approved this time?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Listen, what's really different really isn't that much. That's part of the reason why we were able to move so quickly and get the clearance, is that pretty much all the data was the same. We had to make some labeling changes, right? That the FDA did a great job in making that clear what we needed to do, and also we took their lead. So it moved extraordinarily quickly using pretty much all of the same materials that we were able to use in the first submission.
Thank you. Excuse me. The next question is, when can we expect US sales to start following this clearance?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we plan, as I stated earlier, right, we're in the midst of trying to gear up our commercial production of FebriDx. So we need to accomplish those things before we can start to actually, take orders and get revenue. So we're expecting that we'll be able to take orders prior to the end of this calendar year, and very excited to get going on that.
Thanks, Doug. A question that came through an email. Can you please ask Lumos's management team about the cost of purchasing FebriDx cassettes from its supplier? Or can we at least get an idea on anticipated profit margin on the FebriDx product in the US market?
I can take that one, Matt, if you want. I think everyone knows the FebriDx cassettes are purchased from Atoma. So I don't think, given the commercial nature of that agreement, I'm not sure I can disclose the actual cost of the cassettes. But, from our financials we've been reporting, the gross profit margin for Lumos is, in the north of 50%, heading towards 60%. For a proprietary product like FebriDx, you'd expect margins to be at that level or potentially a little bit higher, depending on volume and scale, which, we need to work through over the coming months. So I think that's where that's sitting at the moment.
Thank you. The next question is, why have sales of FebriDx been so low in approved markets?
Yeah, appreciate the question. Thank you very much. Actually, I wouldn't say that they've really been that low. I'd love them to be a lot higher, don't get me wrong. Listen, we've launched that product during a pandemic, right? When really most countries and most healthcare systems have been focused really on COVID testing. So I would just say that, we've had modest sales, but given the conflict with COVID, it makes sense where sales are, and we're starting actually to, as you've seen over the last months, we've started to garner some additional sales in multiple countries through some of our dealers and distributors. And actually, I expect that to continue here with increased uptake, even ex-US, now that we're not in a COVID setting.
Thanks, Doug. Another question that's come through. Post-IPO, I believe there was much investment in getting FebriDx ready for launch. What inventory, manufacturing, etc., is available from there to get started?
Want me to have a go at that one, Doug? Yeah, look, there was a lot of investment in, getting FebriDx ready for launch, after the IPO, marketing materials, inventory, equipment and the like. We still have all the equipment, so, there's no issues on the equipment front. We still have the equipment in California, and we have the team there to, to manufacture that product. I probably would just caution everyone on the inventory though. The cassettes, there's a buffer in the top and there's a lancet in the bottom. They do have expiry dates on those cassettes. So some of the inventory that was purchased after the IPO will expire. And I think, as Doug mentioned, we will need to go back and reorder some of those materials for the launch of FebriDx in the US. We'll keep it to a manageable. We won't get out over our skis like happened previously. We'll keep it manageable and keep a close eye on working capital as we go forward.
Thank you, Barry. I've had a couple of questions come through, which I'll sort of wrap into one, which is just shareholders trying to get a view on the potential market for FebriDx in the US. I know that's a hard one to probably gauge at this stage, but if you can give a little bit of commentary around that.
Yeah, thanks again for the question. We are issuing a presentation as well, and there is some information that will be provided in that deck. Having said that, though, we're still in the middle of finalizing our strategic commercial path in the US, so we really don't have an expectation to set relative to either the market and/or guidance around the revenue of the product at this time.
Thanks, Doug. The next question is, what do you see as the biggest challenges to Lumos over the next 12 months, and what strategies will be placed to reduce operating risks?
Yeah, the biggest challenges to me really are now taking advantage of opportunities, quite frankly. So, I would say with the clearance of FebriDx, as well as the capital placement that's occurred right now, it's really about driving forward in 3 areas. One, that getting the production and the commercial plan finalized for FebriDx. 2, we've talked a lot about our strategic partnerships and our services business, which is doing very, very well, and it's about executing for those agreements. And then lastly, continue to operate in a balanced fashion around our cash flow, right? We can't afford to overinvest, right? Even though we have a nice placement here and we're able to hopefully execute on improving our balance sheet. We still need to be very, very careful about how we spend our money and how we continue to make money, and try to do that in a way that ultimately is driving to cash flow positivity over time.
Thanks, Doug. The next question is, does the FebriDx clearance in the US enable sales to GPs in the primary care setting? Are there And are there other tests required to be conducted by clinicians before FebriDx would be used in the clinical workflow?
Yeah, certainly the limitation on the GP setting in the US has everything to do with what's called the CLIA licensure. So if the GP's location operates under a CLIA license, then yes, they can use the test. Having said that, though, many GP offices would not, and therefore they operate in what's called a CLIA waived environment. This test is considered a moderate complex. It must be done under a CLIA license. So if you had a GP office without that, you should not do the test.
Thanks, Doug. This will be a question for you, Sam. With the tranche 1 buyback right, are we anticipating Lind, the investor, to purchase a third remaining face value at the current conversion price? If so, what is the expected share dilution?
So obviously we're talking about the future there, Matt. So fundamentally, we've raised money today, and our stated objective is to address the convertible note, because it was a necessary but expensive financing tool, and it's we obviously received that financing through not just Lind but also SBC. I think both parties have done extremely well just because of the timing of the FDA announcement. So I think in terms of that type of structure, we don't want it around. So we will work with our partners, our financing partners, to remove those notes. What the price is that gets taken out and when is a little bit crystal balling, to be honest, but we'll obviously do it in a manner that ensures that we can keep Lumos's treasury as full as possible. It's been, the timing of the FDA announcement and around the conversion, what have you, it has been, a little bit disappointing, to be honest, that the amount of shares that we've had to issue as part of that financing facility. And I know that I've had a lot of questions over the last week regarding that. And fundamentally, we as a company don't want to have to go through that again for much longer.
Thank you. The next question is, apart from the contracting element, what other benefits could Hologic provide? For example, could Lumos use their sales and distribution networks?
Probably the number one thing is that there is a long-term possibility of having a strategic partnership across multiple functions, if you will, within the business. So whether that's, services work where we're, say, prototyping, or there could be opportunities for developing products or manufacturing products and/or commercial opportunities together. But at this stage, right, we have nothing to announce at this time, other than those agreements that we've already put in place with Hologic, and they have turned out to be a wonderful partner for us so far, and I'm looking forward to continue to grow and foster that partnership with them.
Thanks, Doug. Another question that's come through on email was, will Lumos focus on getting US government contracts for delivering FebriDx in hospitals/emergency settings?
Could you repeat that question one more time, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Will Lumos focus on getting US government contracts for delivering FebriDx into hospitals or emergency settings?
Yeah, the focus will be on both direct sales into urgent care centers, as well as what are called emergency room or emergency wards in the US, as well as working with dealers and distributors who also sell into those licensed, CLIA licensed testing areas.
Thank you, Doug, and to the team. I don't have any further questions. Sam, I'll hand it back to you just to wrap up if you like.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks all the shareholders and interested parties for joining us today. Obviously, as the company embarks on its operating plans, which have now been brought forward quite a bit, 6 months, we'll be obviously interacting with the market and letting you know, how we're building that commercial momentum. So thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to a lot more engagement in the future.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks again to everyone for joining. We'll see you next time.